Hi, this is Phil Shapiro in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I recently went back to read a really interesting book called Socrates Cafe. I've read this book before. It's a 2001 book by Christopher Phillips. Christopher Phillips is a wandering philosopher who lives in Philadelphia but goes around the country, and I think he even goes to other countries, to help communities learn how to think together out loud in communal settings. And he's been to the public library where I work, Tacoma Park, Maryland Library, and he's coming back to visit in just a week or two. And I felt, I must do a review of his book because I just love the book. I just love this book, and I love the process that he brings to communities. You'll see. Let's take a look at this book here. So this is the inside jacket of the book. Let me read this out loud. It's worth hearing. Christopher Phillips is a man on a mission to revive the love of questions that Socrates inspired long ago in ancient Athens. Public Radio International has called him the Johnny Appleseed of philosophy. Motivated by charismatic optimism and passionate ideals, he has traveled around the country gathering people to participate in Socrates Cafes. That's his own designation, in bookstores, senior centers, elementary schools and universities, and a prison. In this lively account of his travels, Phillips recalls what led him to start his itinerant program and recreate some of the most invigorating sessions. These philosophic exchanges reveal something surprising, often profound reflections on the meaning of love, friendship, work, growing old, and more, among life's big questions. Philip also draws from his own learning to introduce readers to other philosophers in the great Socratic tradition. An engaging blend of philosophy and storytelling, Socrates Cafe will inspire every curious mind to start asking questions and every reader to live more fully the examined life. So that's the inside jacket of this book. And you should check to see if your public library owns a copy. And if it doesn't own a copy, see if you can find a secondhand copy to buy. It is well worth getting your hands on this book. I hope it gets republished sometime. It's well worth a publisher republishing this, maybe a newer version or something. So here's a few quotes I took out of the book just to show you how wonderful it is. So here's from the earlier chapters. It says, "Seeking Socrates, what in the world do I mean by that?" Here's the short answer. For a long time, I'd had a notion that the demise of certain type of philosophy has been to the detriment of our society. It is a type of philosophy that Socrates and other philosophers practiced in Athens in the 6th and 5th centuries BC. A type that utilized a method of philosophical inquiry that every man and every woman could embrace and take for his own or her own, in the process rekindle the childlike, by no means childish, sense of wonder. A type of vibrant and relevant philosophy that quite often left curious souls with more questions than they had at the outset of the discussion, but at times enabled them to come up with at least tentative answers. A type of anti-guru philosophy in which the person leading the discussion always learns much more from the other participants than they could ever learn from him. A type of philosophy that recognized that questions often reveal more about us and the world around us than answers. A type of philosophy in which questions often are the answers. Here's another quote I pulled out. This was so easy for me to find great passages from this book. It was almost, the great passages are on many pages of this book. Wherever Socrates Cafe is held, those who take part form a community of philosophical inquiry. My fellow Socratics have an enduring curiosity that cannot be quenched or satisfied by the facile responses of know-it-all gurus or of psychologists who cubbyhole their existential angst into demeaning paradigms or psychological behavior. Those who take part in Socrates Cafes are more concerned with formulating fruitful and reflective questions than with formulating absolute answers. Everyone is welcome, and virtually all topics are valid for debate. Together and alone, we push our thinking in surprising directions. And then this quote was really interesting. The Socratic method forces people to confront their own dogmatism, according to Leonard Nelson, a German philosopher who wrote on such subjects as ethics and theory of knowledge until he was forced by the rise of Nazism to quit. By doing so, participants in Socratic dialogue are in effect forcing themselves to be free, Nelson maintains. But they're not just confronted with their own dogmatism. In the course of Socrates Cafe, they may be confronted with an array of hypotheses, convictions, conjectures, and theories offered by other participants and themselves, all of which subscribe to some dogma. The Socratic method requires that honesty and openly, rationally, and imaginatively they confront the dogma by asking such questions as, what does this mean? What speaks for it and against it? Are there alternative ways of considering it that are even more plausible and tenable? Lastly, this quote is a gem. I then go on to say, it seems to me that no matter what question you ask yourself, whether completely alone or with other people, if you give it your all when you try to answer it, you are trying to better understand yourself. And self-understanding can be self-transcendence. It can put your life in new perspectives. You can see your place in the scheme of things from new vistas and vantage points because you are further discovering your mind, and discovering your mind can be like discovering a new universe. Well, the book is just filled with really interesting ideas and observations just like this. Now, you're probably curious to say, okay, Christopher Phillips, I'd like to meet this person. I'd like to meet the person who wrote this book. So I'm wondering to myself, is there any way I can bring Christopher Phillips into this book review? I could potentially bring him in via Skype as a live, but how about this, something almost as good as that? Let me find an excellent YouTube video where he is doing some of his philosophical inquiries, and let's see if I can pull that up. Oh, look at this. I happen to have one right here, all queued up. Ha, ha. So this is from YouTube. I went searching for Socrates Cafe, and I found Christopher Phillips with his own family, wife and young kids, and he's doing philosophical inquiries in his family. This is adorable and interesting. This is from the year 2016. And it's an inquiry into what is a good family. And you get to see his philosophical inquiry methods. Let's take a peek at this for a little bit. So here we go.
So, our question for today was raised by Callie. Is this a good family? Is this a good family?
Sibylle, you start.
Sib, is this a good family?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Yeah, I know.
Why yes, Callie?
Because we have lots of things in common, and sometimes we have split-ups in common.
Really? Are we going to divorce?
No.
What's a split up? Like the two people with the sweet tooth go together?
Yeah.
Ah, cool. Shoo, I was worried.
The three people. Sweet tooth.
3 people. So mommy. Oh, wait a second. All right. So a good family. We are a good family because we have things in common, even if we split up from time to time. 2 people. Like you and mommy sometimes to do what?
I don't know. And sometimes me and you. And sometimes me and Sid.
But what do you and I do when we split up?
I don't know.
Well, what did we do last time we split up like that?
Shoes.
Shoes? No, later than that.
Shoe shine. Ice cream.
Shoe shine, ice cream. Sim, what do you like to do with mommy?
Shoe shine.
Shoe shine? Do you like to go see Peppa? Who do you go see Peppa with, mommy or daddy? Daddy, thanks for touching me. Oh.
Anyway, you get to see him. Christopher Phillips is very, very good at moderating philosophical discussions. And I noticed that when I went searching for Socrates Cafe videos here on YouTube, some of them, there is no Christopher Phillips. He has visited different towns, and the town has adopted Socrates Cafes as a monthly or a weekly institution, and they are often running without Christopher Phillips. So isn't that interesting? In particular, I'd like you to look up the Delaware Libraries and Socrates Cafe. There's some retired individuals, and they say they totally adore going to the Socrates Cafe at the public library to discuss philosophical matters. So that's a big win. It's a big win where Christopher Phillips has ignited an interest in discussion in a community, shown them the methods, shown them how fun it can be and rewarding, and let the community continue without his participation. So that is very, very interesting. I think also there is in Edinburgh, Scotland, Socrates Cafes. So it has become a global phenomenon. And for a single individual to be able to reach out and increase the amount of thinking and community engagement in this way, that's quite some accomplishment. So I'm going to recommend try and track down Socrates Cafe. Look up Christopher Phillips on Twitter. Look at his website. I think he is Christopher Cafe. I think that might be his Twitter name. Look up his website, and by all means, check to see if he is going to be traveling to your town, because sitting in on one of his sessions, which are always free, and they're located at lots of different places, it's time well spent. And you might even be surprised at how many different individuals in your community are all engaged in talking with one another because of his skill at moderation. So this is Phil Shapiro. Hope you like this review.